Y'all, Fort Pike and Fort Macomb right here outside of New Orleans, Lake Pontchartrain. So these are two star forts close to me. I'm right here in Houston, Texas, and Fort Pike is right here outside of New Orleans, shaped kind of like an anchor. It's got these 3 points. It's got a large citadel in the middle, and Fort Macomb is right across from it. I'll jump over here and show you this first. Let's focus on Pike first, I guess. So these, I don't know if any of y'all are interested in this at all. These are some cool sites to check out StarForts. This one is just StarForts.com, and then this one's pretty cool too. It is FortWiki.com, and I guess we could start with Fort Wiki. It was established in 1819 as the first third system fort construction. So the third system fort constructions, they say, was something they put in to place, 1800s. I haven't gone into too much of the whole third system fort construction, but I know that Fort Pike and Macomb are supposedly some of the first to be in that area of labeling, I guess. The original plan for the Fort Pike was drawn up, blah blah blah. Simon Bernard. I don't know. So this one's the Fort Wiki is kind of like your basic Wikipedia. It's straightforward facts, or what we call facts. But this one, the StarForts.com, this guy likes to put in a lot of humor into his website, which I really like this guy's website. And he goes to tons of these sites and boots on the ground, and he's real funny. And while you're reading his work on each of these star forts, he's got a lot of humor in there, and I like that. But as you can see, you got Fort Pike right here, Fort Macomb, and then New Orleans right here. And this is what they're calling the third system, whatever I said earlier. I already forgot. Anyways, I'll just read you some of this, what this guy has. He's got really good pictures too. So it says, so as we all know by now, if we've been paying attention, the British sailed up the Potomac River during the War of 1812, and with very little in the way of interference towards Washington, D.C. This had the effect one might expect on America's governing bodies, understandably pants-wetting realization that we were practically defenseless against any determined foe with a naval capability. U.S. President James Madison, 1751 to 1836, launched the U.S. Third System of Seacoast Fortifications in 1816. 200 locations along the Atlantic and Gulf coasts were identified as being in desperate need of fortification, and New Orleans was one of the first to receive the attention of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So that's the mainstream history they're giving us for the reasoning in building these star forts, which I just don't buy all of it. I don't understand how they're building these magnificent, just crazy land changing forts, and not really using them. But this here in the middle is what they're calling a citadel. I read somewhere earlier that they're saying that Fort Pike and Macomb are two of the only star forts to have the original citadel still. But I'm gonna show you this guy's humor in his stuff. He puts here, Fort Pike Citadel. Reportedly, Fort Pike and Fort Macomb are the only two forts in the U.S. whose original citadels remained intact. And then he's got the might I point to those of Fort Mifflin and Fort Trumbull. Watch yourself when you make such claims, StarForts. As you can see, he's got his humor in there, and this guy, he's gone to just about every star fort we have in North America. Let's read a little more on it. Fort Pike was built to be manned by a garrison of 400 or so, a number of men that was only even stationed there for relatively brief periods in wartime. In peacetime or semi-peacetime, the garrison was generally 80, but often just a single ordnance sergeant lived in the fort as a caretaker. At one point during the Seminole Wars, 66 U.S. soldiers at Fort Pike guarded over 250 Seminoles and their slaves. Yeah, you always have this slave narrative going on with these star forts too. What's it say here? Fort Pike was fully manned during the Mexican-American War and was again used as a staging area this time for troops on their way to smite the wicked Mexicans. The Mexicans were duly smited and smote question mark, and Fort Pike's single ordnance sergeant resumed his lonely vigil. I just don't buy all that. Why they do all this? I mean, if these walls are not small, and this is no small feat to have. I mean, they weren't mass producing bricks yet when they're saying that these were built. So, just look at there's concrete in the brickwork into the ground. Look at that. I mean, it's just inlaid in there. Everything's perfectly laid out, symmetrical. It's just it's a lot. It's a lot, and I just don't think that the narrative they're giving us on these star forts, on why they were built and when they were built, is an actual true narrative. Let's go ahead and jump on Google Earth and just check out Fort Pike before we jump into Macomb. I mean, look at this, man. It's in the water, so you're telling me they just took all these damn bricks and came out here and built this thing? And yeah, whatever, I don't know. Let's get into these pictures. Okay, you can get a glimpse of how big this place is. And so, okay, all these holes, you can see it's been burned. These are all for what? What's going on? Why would they do this? Just to have cannons? For what? You're gonna shoot this wall? What's going on here? What would be the point? Look at this. And then when I've only been to one star fort, and that was Fort Pickens, but there was a whole lot in Fort Pickens that I saw that just didn't make sense into if you were, building this thing as a structure, a fortification to protect, whatever lands you're protecting from a navy that's invading. There's a whole lot of extra stuff that you wouldn't go out of your way to put in, like look at this. Why build a big ass staircase right here, and then another one right there? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. There's too much going on. None of it makes sense. But I'm captivated with these star forts. Most of the star forts are underground. I know I mentioned that in previous videos, but I doubt anybody's ever going to watch these anyway. But when I was at Fort Pike, most of the star fort was underground, and just look at the way they laid the bricks. Like, none of this is happenstance and done just, I just can't see people in the 1800s doing this. But yeah, these places are huge, and just like Fort Pickens, you had this under thing right here. I think the mainstream narrative is that's where you would have your fire going or whatever, but then a cannon's supposed to be right here, and then there's usually a vent right there, and there's going to be another chimney right behind you most of the time. That's how it was at Fort Pickens. Let me see. And then you got the inlay of the cement in the brick, and they say that was something to do with the cannons. I just don't buy it. And then the way I forget what they called it, in the walls, every once in a while you'll see like just a perfect diamond shaped corners dug out of the walls. And as you can see, they came and put plaster at some point all over the walls, and then you see the cement inlays right here, and there's metal around that too. But as you can see, look at the symmetry, and it goes on, and it's just a circle. This thing is the way it's shaped, and yeah, it's just a lot. And I don't see 1800s soldiers doing this for war. And as you can see, this one's open. It's different than the others. They change, and see, it's got more opening here. I'm gonna go ahead and jump into Fort Macomb, which is right across from this one. As you can see, they come and put a bunch of lumber in here. I'm not sure what's going on with that. I doubt this structure needed the lumber in there to keep it upright, because these things are built to last. Alright, we'll check out one or two more of these shots. Let's jump over here on, this is the above the ground, and as you can see, like, this is a lot of brickwork going on. This is not just a little bit. Tons and tons of brick. And they have a little campfire setup thing right there. They drag in their cannons for the mainstream narrative. It's a lot. These things are humongous. And I'm gonna jump back over here. We'll check out what a Fort Wiki shows us. Their images on Fort Pike. Nothing really stands out. I just figured I'd share this site with y'all. It's got some good stuff in it. On to Fort Macomb. Alright, so let's see. As you can see, Fort Macomb's got a lot more grown over than Pike. It says, built in the 1820s to protect New Orleans by preventing seaborne enemies of the United States, access to Lake Pontchartrain is absolutely not open to the public today. The fort was abandoned by the U.S. Army in 1871. An effort was made to commercialize the fort and its surrounding area in the 1980s, but this effort met with public indifference, and Fort Macomb was locked up indefinitely. Fort Macomb is viewable from the South Shore Marina and operates across a water channel, but the fort is officially inaccessible. However, I already read all this. He got out there and got boots on the ground at Fort Macomb. It says Fort Macomb was built simultaneously with Fort Pike to the exact same plans. Only Macomb is slightly smaller version of the same design. Pike had been open to the public until very recently, so the decision to let Fort Macomb wither on the vine was, while despicable from the Starfort enthusiast point of view, perfectly reasonable from the state of Louisiana's. And I don't understand how all of that, effort could go into this and then just let it go. Who cares? But whatever, I don't know. So let's check out his pictures. He's got some good ones. So as you can see, look at that. That's metal coming out of the wall. There's a lot going on in these Starforts, not just brick. There's a lot of concrete inlays, metal inlays, and you can see it's huge. They came in, and look at this. This is underground. So that's a lot for taking in water and all that. There's a lot going on, and I don't think just in the 1800s they're gonna have sailors out here building this thing and then they're just gonna decide to let it go. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, you see they got and most of them have these waterways in them. And I know for sure Fort Jefferson is said to be able to convert salt water into fresh water. Like, that's a part of the Starfort's design. It has cisterns, and it has the ability to make fresh water out of the salt water. And look at these trenches. Like, that's just not thrown up real quick by sailors or whoever just to sit around and see if anybody's gonna attempt, to invade. It ain't happening. That's not the way the military does things. They don't just throw a whole bunch of money into something and then just sit in it and wait. Maybe they do. I don't know. I just don't see them doing this. I see them investing that into more warships. Not these fortifications. Kind of like today they would just. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, anyways, let's jump to Fort Macomb on Google Earth so I can close this out. I know nobody's gonna watch this, and that's cool with me. It makes me feel good to make these anyway. Macomb. There we go. Is that it? I believe so. No. Okay. Let me pull up my KMZ file. Hang on real quick. StarForts. Bam. I need to see. Yeah, this catalog, this KMZ file by Colm Gibney is awesome. It'll show you every Starfort that we know of. And here's Fort Pike, and then bam, Fort Macomb right there. So yeah, it's overgrown, but there's one, so they're gonna give us one shot on Google Earth, and let's check it out. Yeah, they've let it go, but that's not surprising. They don't really care about these things. I don't think they did back then either. I think they just found them, jumped in, and started claiming things just like everything else. But yeah, that's about all I got today. Fort Pike and Fort Macomb. I'm gonna keep working at these star forts that are closer to me. So I started with the last star fort, and I forget the name of it right now. That is in Atascocita. No, I didn't do Atascocita, but I found out there's one in Texas, and it's not even by water. And I think I'm gonna do the next one on that because it's got an interesting story about the Mexican-American Revolution War. I'm gonna start working on that next.